All right, everyone, if you can begin to take your seats, we will begin our program in 3 minutes. Check. All right, if everyone can make their way to their seats, we're going to get started. All right, well, welcome everyone to this year's Fishers State of the City. My name is Jack Russell. I serve as president and CEO of OneZone Chamber of Commerce. We are so excited to have you all here today. Real quick, we also want to thank one of our sponsors and do our wonderful minute at the mic, and that is going to be Chad Dilley with IU Health, the COO of IU Saxony. With that, I'm going to hand the mic over to you.
Thanks, Jack. Appreciate it. Well, welcome everybody tonight. We're really excited to be here. It's no secret that Fishers is one of the fastest growing communities, and that's what we're doing at IU Health Saxony, soon to be IU Health Fishers. We're going to grow to meet the needs of the community, and that's for today and for many generations to come. We want to start off just by thanking Mayor Fadness and his team. What a fantastic group of leaders that serves the community on a daily basis. I want to thank the partnership here with OneZone to be able to provide this. And we really sincerely hope that you have great health, particularly with the holidays coming up. We hope that you don't need us. And in the event that you do, please know that we're going to be here to serve you no matter what you need for many years to come. So thank you all very much. Have a great night.
Thank you so much. It is my honor to welcome Mayor Scott Fadness. Scott Fadness became Fishers' first mayor on January 1st, 2015. Since then, he has brought to life a smart, vibrant, and entrepreneurial vision for the city. His efforts revitalizing Fishers downtown have been especially important to attracting and retaining professional talent from across the country. Mayor Fadness's focus on making Fishers inviting to employers large and small has resulted in new economic development records being set each and every year since he's took office. Critical to attracting jobs and families to Fishers are the amenities that make a community feel like home. Mayor Scott Fadness has led efforts to strengthening city services and the quality of life amenities. Some highlights include parks and trails improvements, the new downtown amphitheater, the creation of the Agri Park, the nation's largest urban farm, the attractions of IKEA, Topgolf, Fishers District, Geist Waterfront Park as well. Scott serves in a variety of roles to promote policies important to Fishers' success and to support causes important to the community residents. He serves on the Federal Communications Commission, Intergovernmental Advisory Committee, Indiana's Behavioral Health Commission, and a member of the Hamilton Southeastern School Foundation Advisory Council. Prior to becoming mayor, Scott served as Fishers town manager and an adjunct professor at Indiana University, Purdue University, Indianapolis School of Public Environmental Affairs. He holds a master's degree in public affairs from Indiana University. With that long introduction, I'm happy to welcome Mayor Scott Fadness.
Let me get my Britney Spears mic on. So let me just start with our slideshow here, if I could. And I was noticing as I was preparing this tonight, it was not intentional that sport coat is the same sport coat I have on right now. I will tell you, though, you guys in the audience, and stick with me here because I'm going to be vulnerable for a moment. You've all been in this situation. You have a sport coat that you love. Your wife tells you it's a great sport coat. She bought it for you. She said, this is the one you need to wear. And for some reason in my home, I wear holes in the elbows. And my wife asks, do you go to work in Army crawl? Like, what is going on with your sport coat? She goes, you got to go buy a new one. And so I go to the store, and all you guys know which store I'm talking about. You go to the store, and you find said jacket, and you go to buy it, and there's a guy at the store, and he says, that's a wonderful jacket. It's going to look great on you. Normally that jacket is $600, but today you can buy 6 of them for $700. Now at this moment, you're guaranteed to go home and feel like you've demonstrated your prowess in purchasing. Your wife's going to be so proud of you, but you've forgotten something. Now you're out of your element when it comes to picking what other jackets you're going to buy. So what do? You do the same thing I did. I need the light blue jacket with the dark blue stripes. And then could I get the dark blue jacket with the light blue stripes? And then the darker blue jacket with the dark blue stripes. And you go home with this prize to show your wife. And you're like, look at the triumph I've done. Your wife looks at you with disappointment. You spent more money than you were supposed to. And you have 7 jackets that look exactly alike. And so for the last 4 years, if you've seen me, I literally look the same in every picture that you're going to find. But all that aside, it was a big year for me. I turned 40 years old this year, and it was a moment in the time for reflection. And at the same time, our city turned 150 years old. And it's also a time for reflection about who we were, where we came from, where are we today, and perhaps a little glimpse about where we're going moving forward. So today, if you would allow me, I'd like to have a conversation about all 3 of those stages. So, founding of Fishers, 1872, believe it or not, here's a picture of 116th Street and the nickel plate rail line. And for the first 100 years of our existence, we were a farm community. We had more in common with the rest of Indiana than we ever did with any large city, Indianapolis, or any other suburb. The people that lived in this community or lived around this community were there for one reason only: proximity to a rail line and a close place for them to bring their produce, their goods from the farm to the community. And we were that way for 100 years. And then 1974, 1970s, somewhere around that time frame, things started to evolve in our town as we knew it. There started to be new residents in our community, ones that weren't necessarily directly related to agriculture or the farm community or farm economy. They moved here because they might have had a job somewhere in the big city of Noblesville or in downtown Indianapolis, but they still wanted the farm life. And so from 1974 on, for a period of time, that chapter of our community's existence, we started to gain more residents. But they were typically people from other small communities in Indiana that were no longer working in farms, but wanted to have the farm life. Then all of a sudden, this is the same aerial, same space. 1994, 1992 hits, and that accelerated residential growth goes into overdrive. In the 90s, our community saw an unparalleled amount of suburban sprawl. From 1994 to really 2010, 2011, we built nearly 1,000 new homes a year. Eric Pethel, our public works director, used to tell me there were times when he could remember at least 15 to 17 subdivisions under construction at one time, and those subdivisions would be filled up in under a year or two. The old timers at the schools, they would tell you that they were building a new elementary school once a year or at least once every other year. Imagine that type of residential growth in the 90s and 2000s. These folks came from all corners of Indiana for the most part, fueled by their desire to get out of inner city, to have a piece of the American dream, to have a McMansion. Most of them were dual income, hardworking people, and they wanted to grow their career and their families in a place like Fishers. But then we got big, and a group of residents said, you know, since we're so large, maybe we should be called a city, not a town. And there were a lot of arguments back and forth about what structure of government we should have. Some thought we should stay a town. Some people said, no, I think we should become a city. We need one person with one vision to drive the community forward, to be held accountable for the direction of our community. And so whether you agreed with those arguments or not, the reality is this, that a referendum was held, and the majority of residents voted to become a city. And a city emerged. And during this time frame, many of the things that we know today as Fishers came to fruition. The downtown redevelopment, Launch Fishers, the IoT lab, a lot of economic development, a lot of growth, not residential development necessarily, but a lot of economic development. These 10 years, this time frame, this chapter of Fishers felt as though we were on a rocket ship, that we were doing extremely well. And then all of a sudden, that chapter came to an abrupt end, like so many, I would imagine, across the country. On March 6, 2020, Fishers had its first case of COVID. And the end of that decade of prosperity came political turmoil, political polarization, a pandemic, economic turmoil, social and cultural warfare. And that time of prosperity felt like it was coming to an end. And today, what I want to talk about is why those last few moments of that chapter of our time formed who we're going to be moving forward. You see, during that time, there were so many things happening in the world that would have told all of us to retreat, to be pessimistic, to be jaded, to be apprehensive about the future of our community, to be defensive. But instead, we didn't. You know, I always like this quote, not to be philosophical here, but it's by Robert Frost. He said, "Two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by." And that has made all the difference. You see, our administration, city council, our city leaders during this difficult time did indeed challenge the status quo and take a path less traveled. And I do believe it has made all the difference in this next chapter of our community. So let's talk about where we're going. We've talked about where we've been. We've talked about where we are. Let's talk about where we go from here. And as I think about this, as this emerged after the pandemic, we're really focused on kind of three basic tenets. The economy, operational excellence in our community. And I want to talk to you today about each one of those and why they're so important and the progress that's underway and how we came to the conclusion that these are the areas we should be focused on. So let's start with the economy. As I mentioned before, from 2014, our administration has focused on the economic development aspects of our city. And we've had a tremendous amount of success. Nearly 8,100 new jobs have been recruited to our community, a community of 100,000 people. We've had 8,100 new jobs brought to our community since 2014. 1,246 retained, $2.5 billion of investment in our community. To put that in perspective, our gross assessed value is right around $10 to $12 billion. But we've been able to recruit 20% more. And the average salary was $75,000 a year. Good paying jobs. The median income in the prior decennial census was $52,000 for Hamilton County. So significantly above the county's average. So as I was putting these thoughts together today, what blew me away when I started looking at the numbers is this next slide. So since 2020, when we had all this economic turmoil, when we had all this chaos, out of those 8,000 jobs, we were able to land 50% of those jobs during what might have been considered one of the most tumultuous times in our country's history. 3,400 new jobs were committed between 2020 and 2022. The average salary being $90,000. We bumped it from $75,000 to $90,000. $1.8 billion of investment and $575 million of venture capital. Now go back, 8,000 in 10 years. In the two worst years that we could imagine, we landed 50%, nearly 50% of those new jobs. How did we do that? Well, Megan Baumgartner, our economic development director, and I believed that we had to find an opportunity amongst the chaos. We had to position our community to be successful in a new normal. So let's talk about how we did that. Everyone knew Fishers as synonymous with tech and entrepreneurship, but we believe we need to evolve our economy, to broaden it, to expand it, to diversify it. And so we started focusing on life sciences. And look at some of the numbers in just the last 2 years around life sciences. A new 80-acre life science park, 1,000 new high-paying jobs, $750 million in capital investment. And this last one is really extraordinary. By 2024, the amount of lab space and office space associated with life sciences in our little community will multiply by tenfold, with nearly 1 million square feet of what I think is one of the best industries you can recruit to your community. So the question might be asked, how'd you do it? Well, let's talk about that, because it really comes down to hard work and a belief in being optimistic, believing that you can actually accomplish something even in the midst of chaos. This is Incog Pharmaceutical. Two gentlemen by the name of Corey Lewis and Ted Green. These two individuals met with an attorney in our community who was talking about their entrepreneurial vision. They were spin-outs from a life science company. They wanted to start their own life science company. And because of our entrepreneurial passion, the attorney said, you really should meet with the city of Fishers. And Megan and I, having no background in life sciences, met with these folks. And I remember we had a discussion in a parking lot of an office building. We connected with these people and we said, we don't know your industry, but we believe it fits in our community. And we want to be creative and we want to work with you. Let's get this done. Now, they said they were a startup. In our world of a tech startup, we assumed that meant they had raised maybe $500,000. In life sciences, it's a little different. Their first raise was $70 million, which was a pleasant surprise. So they landed in Fishers, $70 million investment in our community. And because we believed in their story and we got creative and decisive with our city council to bring them here, they started believing in our story. And they told that story to other life science companies, to the point where we had a lead for an Italian firm called Stevanato. And Stevanato told us, hey, if you guys were willing to build a park, a life science park, we'd be interested in landing a $500 million investment in your community. Well, we took the risk. Our council took bold, decisive action because we believed we could do something. We were optimistic in the face of a pessimistic environment. We moved forward. And here you have, we were filling in a massive hole in this life science park. But here's where we are today. Stevanato, that big steel building along I-69, it's an Italian firm, bringing hundreds of good-paying jobs, $500 million in investment. And lo and behold, another firm, List Bio, has announced $150 million in the same life science park. We only have 8 acres of the 80 acres left in this facility. Again, bold, decisive action, a degree of optimism, and a whole lot of hard work has led to this. Our life science and innovation corridor. To name just a few of these companies, Stevanato, List Labs, Incog Biopharma, Telix, Verista, Quantigen, the list goes on and on. Some of the best life science companies in the country, if not the world, now call the I-69 corridor home, and they're bringing good, paying jobs to our city. But that wasn't all that we were able to accomplish. We have brought and recruited some really transformative projects. The Andretti Global Headquarters will redefine the 96th Street corridor. I can't tell you how excited we are to see what this vision can do to reinvigorate an area that for some time has lacked an identity. And not only that, it's bringing amazing high-paying jobs to the city of Fishers. And finally, I am certain that most of you have stopped by Fishers District and have enjoyed the new restaurant culture that we're growing here in the city of Fishers. That particular experiment in a new type of retail, a new type of experiential development has been overwhelmingly positive with our residents. And because of that proof of concept, we're doubling down. And we're looking at another $500 million investment to the south of the district to expand even further our restaurant selections. And I can't wait over the next year to share with all of you the unbelievable national best in practice retailers that are looking to locate here in our community. But our ambitions for the external part of our community have to be matched with our ambitions for the internal components of our community, the desire to provide the best level of service anywhere you can find and taking on the challenges that face us on any given day. There's no greater example of being optimistic, being decisive, and moving towards the direction of the path less traveled than when we started our Fishers Health Department. And just recently, I had an opportunity to sit down with our director and assistant director of public health, and I asked a simple question. Now that the fog is cleared, hindsight is always 20/20. Can you give me an objective, data-driven, empirical review of whether or not we met the challenges of our residents or not? And they did that for me. And what they came back with was humbling and encouraging. So let me just walk through this. I know it's a little wonky, but I want to talk to you a little bit about this. So there are 95 health departments in the state of Indiana today, 95. We are the 18th largest when it comes to population served. And many may not know this, but our population actually lives in a more dense environment than Indianapolis. The number of people per square mile is denser in Fishers than it is in Indianapolis. We have the 13th lowest tax rate out of 95 health departments. We have the 13th lowest tax rate. We have the 20th lowest property tax per resident. And we have the lowest number of employees, the lowest number of FTEs in our health department per 10,000 residents. Now, that's one side of the equation. That demonstrates to all of you that we've been very frugal with the dollar that we've asked out of your pocket. But what have you received in return? Did it make a difference? Well, this next set of numbers is what really blew me away. So, out of 95 health departments, our health department administered more COVID-19 tests for free to our residents than any other health department in the state. In fact, the next highest test giver of health departments in the state of Indiana was half the number that our health department administered. We administered the second most COVID vaccines out of any health department in the state, 95, only second to Marion County. And Marion County only did 4,000 more vaccines than little old Fishers Health Department. 10 times the population, 10 times the number of employees per thousand, and we administered 105,000, of which 40% of them were administered to people that don't live in Fishers. We had the highest completed primary series vaccination. That means we had the highest percentage of people that got vaccinated. And why does all of this matter? Why did we choose to go down this path, and did it, at the end of the day, make a difference? Well, the last slide on here is what allows me to sleep at night. We had the lowest observed case fatality ratio of any health department in the entire state of Indiana. So when we took that bold and decisive action, when we rolled up our sleeves and said, this is something we have to do for our residents, and we excelled at it, it meant the difference between life and death for someone. Someone's grandparent, someone's mom or dad, someone's brother or sister. We stepped forward and said, we're going to take care of this. and it's demonstrated in the success of this health department. But that wasn't the only challenge facing us. It wasn't the only risk that we were having to deal with. Our urban core, Indianapolis, was seeing year in and year out murder rates that were breaking records. There wasn't a night you would wake up that you wouldn't see someone being shot, multiple people being shot. Chief Gephardt and I had multiple conversations about what are we going to do about this. And again, two paths. One, pretend it's not happening. Believe that somehow we can stay here in Hamilton County in utopia, build a wall, and we'll be okay. And maybe it just won't show up here. Or we can get involved. We can get active. We can be a part of the solution. And that's exactly what we did. Fishers joined IMPD to formalize the Crime Gun Intelligence Center, which I've talked about before in a couple of these states of the city. But we're now a year into this. And thanks to Representative Chris Jeter, Speaker Houston, Senator Kyle Walker, who were all tireless advocates to secure funding because they believed in this idea that we had, that we could marshal all the collective resources of central Indiana towards the issue of gun violence and see what we could get accomplished. Well, I'm proud to say today, we have 13 different law enforcement agencies as a part of the Crime Gun Intelligence Center. We confiscated over 390 guns last year, of which 200 of them linked back to a crime that had been committed. Now, someone might say, great, you guys are helping out Marion County. Great job, give yourself a pat on the back. But I think you need to understand how pervasive the problem is. And sometimes a picture is worth 1,000 words. So let me share a few pictures that Chief Gephardt was so kind to provide to me. So this is Boone County, gun confiscated. And the guns that are confiscated that we're showing here tonight either have a criminal nexus, which means they were used in the commission of a crime, or they were in the hands of a violent felon that should not have had the gun. This is a gun that was secured by CJICs in Boone County. These are guns that were secured out of Johnson County, Greenwood. This is Hendricks County, guns that were secured over the last year. And these are guns that were secured in Hamilton County. The work of these folks, these men and women, the most talented you can find, working in the Crime Gun Intelligence Center, working against the most violent criminals out there, are doing extraordinary work. And I'm excited to see how this program is going to continue to progress. We just recently had our first successful case of a violent criminal in Anderson tied to this Crime Gun Intelligence Center. I think you're going to see us expand the geography of this, and I believe that this is a national best practice moving forward. But we cannot stop evolving and adapting to the world that we find ourselves in. The safety of our community is paramount. It is the number one priority that we have, and we can win that war through operational excellence and innovation. Now, this is Sergeant Jim Hawkins and Jenna Burrows. And no, they are not buying lottery tickets with that machine, although it does look like it. But this machine has the opportunity to be just as transformative as winning the lottery. So let me paint a picture for all of you of something that could happen in our community tonight. Let's say in your neighborhood, there's a house nearby, and someone breaks into that home, and a violent interaction ensues. And the perpetrator gets away, but before the perpetrator gets away, he bleeds in the house. He leaves blood. Well, the old model of policing would be Sergeant Hawkins and his team would come out, collect that evidence. We would take that blood, we would mail it off or ship it to the state lab, and over a series of days or weeks, depending upon the priorities of what's going on, we would eventually get that DNA profile back. Now, most of us are not police officers. I'm certainly not one, but we can all understand that the quicker that we get good information and can pursue the appropriate people, the higher the likelihood of having a good outcome in that investigation. So let's change that for a moment and talk about a different model moving forward. So that same incident occurs, and Sergeant Hawkins and his team come out to your home and they collect that blood sample. Now what they do is they drive right back to our Fishers Police Department. They process that sample and they put it in this machine. In under 90 minutes, they will have a DNA profile of the evidence that they collected. And then they can run that against not only our database of DNA profiles, but because we've not only innovated, but we've collaborated, Superintendent Doug Carter and the Indiana State Police, we could now run that profile against thousands of other known felons to see if there's a connection and if there's a match. Now, that's going to transform the way we do law enforcement, and we're the first community in the state of Indiana to have rapid DNA. And it has unintended consequences, good consequences. About 4 or 5 months ago, I think it was, Chief Gephardt and I, we were having lunch with the county coroner, which if any of you have ever had lunch with a county coroner and a police chief, I recommend you order a salad or something because it can get pretty sporty. We were talking about this new technology, and we were asking the coroner, what kind of challenges do you have in your role? Many people don't know this, but under Indiana law, there's only 3 ways you can identify a body and issue a death certificate. The family has to identify the individual, dental records, or DNA match. And we said, well, we have this new technology that our lab's working through. We think we might be able to be beneficial at some point if you need us. Well, it wasn't very long after that. The county coroner called our team because they had an individual who had died in a car accident. And unfortunately, that person's body was mangled beyond any kind of identification. And the idea of having a family member walk in there to try to identify him just seemed utterly cruel. Now, we knew who the person was, but because we had to wait for DNA, there are no dental records, that could take days, if not weeks, to be able to allow that family to start the grieving process and go through the funeral. And so we took on the challenge. And so I'm proud to say that over the last 4 or 5 months, we've done this 11 times for families to be able to bring that closure to them that much sooner. Not only in Hamilton County, but even in Vigo County, we helped a coroner deal with this issue. I have to say, if I could, I can't tell you how proud I am of Major Mike Peterson, Sergeant Jim Hawkins, and the entire team at our lab here in the Fishers Police Department. Not only did they have to take on the burden of the Crime Gun Intelligence Center and processing those guns, we threw another innovation at them and said, please go do this. And they have figured it out, and they're going to lead the state around this. They're here tonight. Could you please give them a round of applause for the work that they're doing? So it's not enough to rely upon just science to help the service delivery and the long-term sustainability of our city. We have to have a legislative format that's equally as innovative. And we have some challenges. Recently, Fishers was featured in the Wall Street Journal. We had raised awareness about this new phenomenon that Wall Street realized what all of you and your parents and your grandparents knew, that buying a home in a good community is a sound investment. Wall Street wants to capitalize on that. And so Wall Street started buying, investors started buying homes in Fishers at record numbers. Here's a map, generally, of all the homes that are investor owned in the city of Fishers. Now, I have philosophical challenges with this. I believe denying middle-class folks the ability to purchase their own home is bad for the long-term viability of those individuals and our community. But it goes beyond that. So just to give you a scale of what's happening in our city, and we're not unique, by the way. This is happening in all the desirable or affluent communities across really the country. We have 249 subdivisions in the city of Fishers. And the 2 bottom numbers are the ones you should really pay attention to. There are 37 neighborhoods now in Fishers, 37, that 20% of the homes are owned by investors or renters, over 20%. And there are 81 neighborhoods in Fishers that have 10% of their housing stock rented. Now, why is that a concern beyond the philosophical issue that we're denying people the opportunity to own their own home? Well, the stats prove out. Investor-owned or rental properties generate about 10% of our overall housing stock. But they represent 33% of our code enforcement issues. When it comes to police calls for service, although they're 10% of our housing stock, they represent 17% of our police calls for service. In the next 2 to 3 months, I'll be bringing a proposal forward to our city council for consideration to implement a renter registration program, as well as a permitting process that will cap the percentage of homes in any given neighborhood that can be rental. I look forward to a robust discussion with our city council about the merits of this, but I think it's vital for the long-term sustainability of our city. But there's other legislative work to be done. Our police and fire are a precious resource, and they're being overutilized by certain commercial properties. I want to share these numbers with you guys that I thought were pretty astounding. This is over a 4-year period of time. The number of calls for police and fire. These are individual businesses in Fishers. I'm not going to name who they are, but they give you the idea of the type. There's one business in Fishers that over the last 4 years, police and fire have been called to 1,400 times. There's a hotel in Fishers that in the last 4 years, we've been called 521 times for 911 calls, police and fire. 521 times. That's over 100 times a year. We're there once every 3 days. That's precious resources that aren't available for the cardiac arrest in your home or patrolling your neighborhood. And so what we want to do, what we're going to propose to our city council for consideration is to pass a public safety nuisance ordinance that says, look, if you're driving this call volume, you need to come in proactively and sit down with our police chief and our fire chief and our public health director. Let's sit down and come up with a plan, a proactive plan to mitigate these calls. And then at the end of the day, if you're adhering to that plan and you still have calls, well, that's just the nature of your business, and we understand that. But we should at least sit around the table together and try to come up with some creative solutions that preempts these numbers. It's this type of legislative work that we need to do to ensure the long-term viability and sustainability of our city. And I'm excited to bring this forward. These will be kind of first in its kind in Indiana and maybe across the country, and there'll be lots of dialogue and lots of discussion about it. Now, I saved the hardest for last, and that is community. There is no question that in that last few years, last chapter of the city of Fishers, our community was tested in a way that probably has never been tested before. And there's no question that a lot of the ties between all of us have been fragmented and damaged. So the question is how do we build that back? There's probably no greater flashpoint, no more emotionally charged issue than our schools. These headlines are our headlines. And first and foremost, let me say to the current school board, administration, and school board, I want to thank them for their passion and their commitment to our kids over the last several years. I very much appreciated the work they've done. And to the new school board that's coming in our administration, I want you all to know that just as before and for decades before, Fishers as a city stands ready to support our schools in any way, shape, or form that we can. I believe that together, if we align our common visions, there is no stopping HSE schools. The potential for our community is enormous. And if we build a vision for our school system that's built on the principles that every kid, and I mean every kid that graces the doorsteps of our schools has the best environment to reach their true academic potential, and that we work alongside and support our educators, our professional educators to get that done, that we can do anything, and that we will be a differentiator. The schools and the cities aligned in a common vision, Fishers will differentiate itself among so many other wonderful communities. But make no mistake about it, when I see Fishers schools, I don't see the headlines. I don't see the negativity on either side of the issue. Here's what I see. These images of our schools. These kids and these folks are doing amazing work. Here's just a list of the things that have happened in our schools this year. Third place marching band state finals, volleyball state champions, competition for cheering, state champions, HSC football sectional champions, Indiana Academic Spell Bowl, Sand Creek Elementary won it. Students from HSC and Fishers High School took home several awards from the best robotics competition. Fishers High School Marching Tigers placed 10th in the nation. 2022 Bands of America National Championship. I could go down, there's another, I can't even scroll through the list of what our kids have accomplished. Let's build on that. Let's build on that together collectively. And to be sure, I don't want to pick just on our schools. They were not the only institution that found the binds of connectivity strained. Law enforcement, public safety. I remember vividly standing with Chief Gephardt during a protest after George Floyd as our own residents walked by us with signs that said, police are racist, police are murderers, defund police. I remember Chief Arusa and I having a conversation about buying bulletproof vests for our fire department because nationally there was a trend of people calling in fires and then shooting the firemen as they showed up. So there were a lot of signals, I would say, to both of our chiefs during these dark days, the end of our last chapter, that said, retreat. Retreat back to your firehouse. Roll up your windows in your police car. Stay in your police station. Become jaded. Be defensive. But again, this path less traveled. Countless conversations with Chief Gephardt and Chief Arusa led us to a different conclusion. We decided to lean in. I can't tell you how many people we met with and how much time we spent trying to understand better what the consternation was that people had. And we learned a lot, and we talked a lot about what we were going to do to rebuild the relationship between the people we serve and the men and women that wear the uniform. And what was unequivocally true after those conversations is both Chief Arusa and Chief Gephardt, both of them and I agreed, we will never forfeit our relationship with our local residents that we serve, regardless of the national narrative. And so how did we rebuild it? How are we going to rebuild it? Well, it's pretty simple. Here's Chief Gephardt reading a book to kids in an elementary school. Here's our officers at a lemonade stand, stopping and engaging with our kids. Here's an officer letting a little guy just sit inside his car, see what it's all about. When people started calling for the demilitarization of our police department, what we did, we held an open house. We invited the public in. It was fascinating to watch these alpha males, with all their gear, stand there and talk to a mom and dad with a little kid and explain why it is they have this equipment and under what circumstances would they use it. That interaction did more for both parties than you could ever imagine. Again, leaning in, not retreating. I'll never forget a conversation I had with Chief Arusa as we were discussing how we were going to rebuild this relationship between the people we serve and the men and women in uniform. And Chief Arusa said, back in Chicago, in case you don't know this, he's a Chicago guy. He said, we used to do these drills in the summer called cul-de-sac drills. And I think it'd be a good idea for us to do here. And I said, well, what are those? He said, well, it's when you take your firehouse and you go into your district and you start running drills in the neighborhood and people could just come out and engage with you. He goes, what do you think? I said, I think it's a great idea. You should try it. Well, it's easy for me. I get to just say yes or no. Chief Arusa has to go back to a group of firemen who are skeptical about what that relationship could look like moving forward and give them the courage to go out and try it. And they did. And again, I think a picture's worth 1,000 words, but this is Lieutenant Doug Pyle running next to a little guy. And these aren't staged photos. These are just firemen doing what firemen do best. And these are residents reacting to it. Like I said before, we will never forfeit the relationship between the people we serve and the men and women in uniform because of some national narrative. And the truth, to be told, it wasn't just police and fire. It wasn't just our schools. The very institutions of civic government were also challenged under the guise of patriotism. What did we do? We doubled down on what we felt patriotism was. We initiated our Armed Services Commission. We celebrated what true patriotism in public service looks like. But we as an administration also knew we had to do other things. I love this picture because what it exemplifies to me is engagement and humility. So there I am conceding defeat, I'm accepting defeat at a cornhole tournament that my leadership team and I did at Allisonville Meadows Nursing Home at 146th Street in Allisonville. was having a bad day this day. I was getting beat up about some public issue, I don't recall what, and I recalled that we had to go to this event, and I was not thrilled about it. And when I got there, we walked in, and here are these men and women in their 90s, some 100, all dressed in matching uniforms. They had a keyboard player saying, let's go out to the ball game. And they had another section that was, their assignment was to trash talk us. So we sit down across from these folks, and I'm thinking to myself, oh man, half of these guys have walkers, they're over 95 years old. If you haven't met my team, they're relatively competitive. I was really concerned that we were going to demoralize these elderly people. So the first gentleman gets up, and he has a walker. So it took him a while to get to the stand. And I swear, my team can attest to this, he looked me right in the eye, never blinked and never moved, threw the cornhole bag, hit a home run right out of the bag. We got smoked. We got absolutely smoked by these folks. We've been back 4 times. We've yet to win. Getting out of City Hall and going and engaging people where they're at, being reminded of what humanity is really about is so vitally important to building those blocks of community again. Eric Pethel, our Public Works Director, several years ago came up with this simple idea. He said, we have all this wonderful equipment in the city of Fishers. Our people are so proud of the work they do. What if we just put it on display and let families come out and crawl all over it and learn about it? He did. We have a touch truck. And believe it or not, thousands of families come out just to engage our community, our public works employees. And I'll tell you, there's nothing more rewarding than watching one of Eric's guys stand there, proud of the equipment that they maintain, that they work on, to see a family allow their kid to jump all around it and then take a picture. Something that simple. But in that, we make a connection with people. We rebuild our trust in our civic institutions and in our community. We've doubled down on academies. We have the Mayor's Youth Academy. We have the Citizens Government Academy. We have a police academy. We have a fire academy. We have all these opportunities to allow residents to really engage and plug in and learn more about their government. And what I'm most excited about in this next chapter is record investments in the spaces and places where people will interact with one another. It is intentional. It is not by coincidence. It is intentional that our new City Hall, the first floor, the People's Building, will be an art center. We want people in the building. It's their building. It's not about our offices. And so as we broke ground recently, this is the new vision for it. The Indianapolis Arts Center will be the first floor, and it'll be an amazing place. And I can't wait personally to walk into work and see residents there interacting and engaging with their civic government. In the coming months, I plan to bring a proposal forward to our city council to contemplate a community center where, once again, families of all ages, from the infant through to the senior, can come together and interact and recreate in a meaningful way. Fishers has never had that. It's long overdue for us to have a centralized place where we can come together and enjoy one another. And just a few snapshots of what's to come. This Saturday, we're having an open house for Geist Waterfront Park. It'll be cold. I don't recommend swimming, but this park's going to be extraordinary. I can't wait to open up the beach to allow people to come out. And for the first time ever in the history of Fishers, that water will be accessible to people who can't afford to buy a home that costs $1 million. And that means a lot to us as a community. And by the way, it has an unbelievable playground. As a dad of 3 boys, this pirate ship thing, it's going to be awesome. So if you get a chance to check it out, come see it. Some of you may or may not know this, but we're also working on the design of the White River Park, where not only will you have the opportunity to engage with fellow residents, but you'll be able to engage the river and the environment in a way that you've never had before. All of this is under construction or under consideration as we speak. The Nickel Plate Trail will be completed in the next 24 months, all the way down to 96th Street and a bridge over 96th Street. And oh, by the way, imagine having the opportunity to not only run or bike along that trail, but just adjacent to it, the Andretti Family Museum will be there. For you to have the opportunity to literally run next to a global headquarters for racing that has their family museum, and hopefully one day will be a Formula One headquarters. And last but not least, a new event center. It's long overdue that Fishers residents can watch their kids walk across the stage in their own community. We're going to be able to have Fishers high school basketball games in this facility. You're going to be able to come watch a concert, see your neighbors, enjoy Disney on Ice, an Indy Fuel game on a Tuesday night. We can have these things in Fishers. We need this type of community activity in our city. It's vital for the long-term sustainability of our city. All of this, along with all that economic development, is going to be built in the next 24 months. The physical landscape, and what I truly hope is the people landscape in Fishers, is going to transform over the next 24 months, and I can't tell you how excited I am to see that happen. Finally, I'll just close with this. My team has endured a lot over the last several years, last 3 or 4 years, and they have always chosen to do the right thing at the right time for the right reasons. That commitment never wavered, no matter how complicated the world around us got. And yes, at times, probably more times than not, we chose the path less traveled, and as the saying goes, it has made all the difference for our community. Thank you all for being here tonight. Have a safe trip home. Have a wonderful holiday season. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mayor. Well, with that, it is time to celebrate the city of Fishers in the best way we know how, which is we have a wonderful reception, VIP reception. When you exit, you'll go right over here to the left. There's a whole ball